Welcome to this episode of the Connecting Faith to Life podcast. I'm Trey Rhodes, the Connections Pastor at Northwood Baptist Church here in North Charleston, South Carolina. In just a few moments, our lead pastor, Dr. Tommy Metter, will be joining the conversation as well. In our crazy and chaotic world, our hope is that these few minutes will help you stop and reflect on your relationship with Jesus as you learn to connect Christ-centered faith to your everyday life. And we are on episode 270 of the Connecting Faith to Life podcast. And thank you once again for listening. Do get the word out as you listen and say, hey, listen, that was a great podcast. Tell your small group, put it on social media, whatever it takes to get the people listening. I think that they would really enjoy it. And the thing I like about ours is it's real practical, down to earth. And yeah, we do deal with theology because it's important that we do, but there's a lot of practical down-to-earth material that we can use.
We try to apply theology.
Amen. Applied theology. There you go.
That was probably a class you took in seminary.
It is. It really is. Okay. So anyway, there we are. So how you been doing, Pastor?
I'm all right.
Okay.
We got our first baseball game next Tuesday.
Oh, that's right.
My little team I'm coaching, so we got a big week of practice this week, trying to get them ready for the games, and
So what ages are you coaching now?
I am 9 and 10-year-olds. I've got a couple of kids that are the way birthdays work, and
right, of
course.
I
think I've got a couple of kids that are almost 9, but 9 and 10 and there's a big difference between 9 and 10. I tell you what, like my 10-year-olds and they're smacking the ball and doing really well. My 9-year-olds are still learning the game, and so it's makes practice interesting. So,
well, I was going to say that gives you a lot of challenges as a coach.
As a coach who doesn't know what he's doing, it gives me lots of challenges, and yeah, it's been fun. So
now, that's not true. You do know what you're doing.
Well, yeah, I've played a little ball. So yeah, so it's baseball all the time right now. Monday, Tuesday, not Wednesday, Thursday. Yeah, it's crazy.
Well,
it's crazy.
I'm glad, and we were actually talking in one of our meetings earlier this morning, just about the impact that we can have with the gospel and other things. So it's
making some great relationships. Now, a lot of these people I've known because we've been at Montgomery Corner Baseball so long. But in this role, with I've got a few guys I'm coaching with and building relationships with them, and so hopefully it's going to open the door for some good gospel conversations at some point this season. That's what I'm praying for, and yeah, just that reminder that wherever you find yourself, to be living for the kingdom. And, I try to be real encouraging with the kids and bring some faith stuff in with them and practice. And so, yeah, hopefully I'm honoring the Lord in the way that I coach. And, yeah, it's fun.
Amen.
Yeah,
and everybody,
life is good.
Now, let me ask you, in a baseball team, how important is it that everyone contributes?
I think it's fairly important.
Yeah, it is.
The kids don't think so. And that's what's so, not unfortunate. So if you play baseball or you have coached kids in baseball, they always think that the most important place to be is the infield.
And
no kid wants to play the outfield.
Wrong.
And I get it at that age, right? Like most of the action honestly does take place in the infield, but still, like those balls roll past that shortstop, right? Those balls, because they're not there yet where they're catching all those balls. Those balls roll past that second baseman. We got to have that right fielder and that left fielder or that center fielder ready to back them up. I mean, so, yeah, helping those young ones to understand, like, whatever position you are in, it's important because you're part of the team and you're contributing really is a big deal. So, yeah. Lots of life lessons in sports.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. That kind of leads
I know
us to
what your segue was going to be,
yeah.
Pops. You did a really good job. Look at that.
We have
the master of segues.
We donate not only time to our local church. We donate not only just attendance as far as being there, but we also donate our resources.
Our money.
Yeah, our money, our resources, and it makes a difference when everyone decides, and you used those numbers last week, which always shocked me, but I know are pretty true, as far as how few people are actually donating and giving, well, not donating, but actually giving what we would call at least a tithe.
Yeah.
And so it's important because, I think what happens is that most people, number one, they just think they're a cog in the wheel, and it doesn't really matter if I get my $100 here, $100 there, but it does matter hugely.
Yeah.
And trying to get people to understand, because when we donate, it is a huge impact on what the church is able to do.
Yeah. And so you're listening, and here we're talking about money for a second week, money and giving in particular to the local church. And some of you you don't want to hear this. I get it. I get it. Right. Like, you kind of tune out when a pastor begins to talk about money. I understand that. However, I think it's helpful because it is something that God has called us to do. He's called us to be generous with our resources, and I believe that He's called us specifically to be generous to the local church because God uses His church to proclaim the gospel to the nations, and so giving to your local church is hugely important. And further, your church depends on your financial giving, whether you realize it or not. We don't receive income from other sources. We're not selling products where we make a profit off of. We're not,
we give a lot of stuff away.
We give a lot of stuff away.
Yeah.
But we are solely dependent on the giving of generous people to the work of the local church. And again, I think I told you last week that we're healthy in our giving. We could be a lot healthier. I mean, many of us could do better in our giving, but we don't have financial problems at our church. We're paying all our bills. Our staff is getting paid. We're looking towards building. And so right now we're in a great place financially. We're healthy. But I oftentimes think of what more impact we could have if we had additional resources, if our people were more faithful. And there are some of you who are listening that you're very faithful. So this is not necessarily directed at you, but for those of us who have not grasped the concept of being faithful in our giving, man, if you would, just think about all that we could do as a local church as we strive to reach the people with the gospel. So it's a big deal. And again, I think many of us know it's a big deal, and some of us are trying to take some steps to be better in our giving, and I appreciate that. But I bet you there are a lot of us who come to a church, especially a church like Northwood, because, like I do, Trey, when I was coming up, and probably when you were first pastoring, years ago, back in the Middle Ages.
Yeah,
a long time ago.
Yeah, 1600s.
I just got through teaching in my college class about preaching in the Middle Ages. I do a couple lectures on the history of preaching.
Yeah.
So this is kind of fresh in my mind because I just did this lecture last week. If you're interested in church history, that's a wild time. Anyway, that was, at any rate, that's another story for another day. But the Middle Ages were a really wild time for the church and for preaching and what have you. Anyway, so you'd have been wild if you were in the Middle Ages, pops. You'd been a wild preacher. But anyway, but point being that when I was coming up in church and when you probably started pastoring, we had monthly business meetings.
I do remember those.
You remember those monthly business meetings? They were wild.
Oh,
wild, because
I don't even want to think
whether it was
about
good or bad or whatever. It's just what it was. Monthly business meetings were an open forum for anybody to say anything they wanted to say, and
that's
people
true.
did.
It is true.
So you would have a member of the finance team, or at that point I forget, we call it finance committee, whatever, would get up and they would every month it was the same thing, right? They would give a report of the church's finances, and especially in a smaller church. You would go line by line through that expense report, and the entire church would go line by line through the expense report and what was spent. We spent $30 on copy and paper. We spent $25 on this. It was so tedious. And as a kid, I just remember being so bored through those meetings. And then
you should have been.
Right, because it was horrible. And then, without fail, somebody would get up and say, "Why did we spend $30 on copy machine paper? You could have got it Office Depot for $27. And they would complain and all this kind of stuff. And so I just remember, being bored, but then at the same time, just wondering what's somebody going to say, and just being entertained by just the silliness of the questions that were asked. I mean, it was a wild time, man. And so all that to say, like, if you grew up like I did, kind of that old school Baptist church, I mean, that was the way we did it. And so the good thing about that, if there was anything good about it, the good thing about that is that there was a lot of financial accountability. Because every month, if you wanted to know what was happening with the finances of the church, well, we were going to talk about it. We were going to get the books out. You were going to get a report, and you were going to have the opportunity to go over every dollar that was spent by the church. I mean, and question and say crazy things if you wanted to. That was just the way that it was. And so just over the years, things have changed in church culture. We don't do that as much anymore. At our church, we don't do that at all. We don't have monthly meetings. We have an annual meeting where we talk about, different things. So there's not that opportunity throughout the life of our church to see, on a regular basis where the money is coming from, where it's going, all that kind of stuff. Now, we do here at our church, and if you're listening and you're part of a different church, your church may do things a bit differently. I have no idea. We want to be obviously financially accountable.
Of course.
We want people to know, like we're a nonprofit organization. We want people to know where their money goes when they give. And so we do put out every quarter, we put out quarterly statements where you can pick one up in the lobby and you can read over that and see, what our income is and what's being spent. And those are made available every quarter. And if you miss it, you can always email us and we can send you a copy. And if you have questions, we'll answer those questions. So we're not trying to hide anything at all. We're trying to be transparent, just in a different way. We don't do monthly meetings, and that would be chaotic in a church our size anyway. It'd be very chaotic. And especially, when I think about growing up, you talked about a smaller church, you might have a budget of $100,000, right? We're a church with a budget that's $1.7 million, approaching probably the next few years will cross $2 million. That's significantly more money. And so with that amount of money, then budgets become more complex. And so to have a monthly meeting where we're inviting everybody to come and just talk through line by line what we spent money on would be quite the challenge. And so we try to provide that accountability, but just in a different way.
Yeah. Exactly.
And then we do have, just if you're wondering about, how we do finances here at our church, is we have people that we pay, that we trust very much. We have a CPA that keeps our books, who's very knowledgeable and does a great job. We have one of our former administrative pastor. When he retired, we kept him on staff on a part-time basis to help with keeping the books in conjunction with the CPA that we have who works with our books. And so we have several professionals that keep their eyes on things and honestly keep us very accountable. I think Stacy does a very good job of asking questions and help us to think through things. And so I think that we've got good systems in place. We have a finance team that we run things by when we need to make bigger purchases or whatever the case may be. We have budget systems. We have checks and balances, all those kind of things we have in place. Now, if you're coming to our church on a regular basis, you don't see that or even know that. But behind the scenes, those checks and balances are in place, and we welcome the opportunity to talk about our finances. If you're curious, if you want to sit down and say, hey, I want to know, how this thing works. I mean, we don't mind sharing that information with you. We just do it in a different way than perhaps, you did when you were a kid, or you come from another church. I don't know how your church you came from did it, whatever the case may be. But we do put a high priority on financial accountability and trying to do things well. And,
So when someone gives, does it just go in a big hopper and then everybody just starts grabbing money? Or, I mean, seriously, people that are on the outside looking in, they're just kind of, and I think that would be a good, I think that's why it's important that we talk about what's going on
That's
here.
what I want to talk about in this episode. And I know this is kind of different. This isn't, talking about theology, but still, we're asking people to be faithful to the Lord in their giving. We're challenging you in that, right? Like, we want you to be faithful to the Lord in the way that you give. We want to see you, right, be generous, whether that's 10% or 11% or whatever percentage of your income that you end up giving to the local church. Like, it's a big chunk of money.
Yeah, it is.
Right? Like, I've been doing it for years, and I know what I give, and it's a big chunk of money. Like, it's I'm not giving millions of dollars a year, but
my house is the only thing that I give.
That's
more
probably
to.
true for me. Like my house note is probably it's not probably, it is. My house note is the only thing that is more than my monthly giving,
and it's important. I mean, it really is. We should be doing that.
So it's for some of us, like that gift that we give every month. It's a large amount of money, and praise God for that. Thank you for that. And so what happens to that amount of money? If you're giving, whatever it might be, $50 a week, a couple $1,000s a week, whatever, what happens to that money? Where does it go? Some of you listening, some of you have no idea. You just know you give, and you trust us to take care of that thing, and the ministry of the church go on. Some of you, honestly, you're hesitant to give because you don't know.
Right.
And if you had a better knowledge of what actually took place with your money when you gave it, and we talked about this last time, it's not really your money anyway, it's the Lord's money. But when you give that money, if you knew what was taking place with it, you might be a little bit easier to actually give. And so I want to talk about 5 ways that we as a faith family use the resources, the financial resources that are given to the local church. Now, with that said, there is, just before we dive in, there is a budgeting process. In fact, over the next month or so, we'll begin that at our church, that every year we have a finance team that works in conjunction with our staff and our leaders to produce a budget. We will as a church, vote on that budget in December. So that budget becomes our guide as to how we are going to utilize the different financial resources that you, the people, give to our local church over the next year. So it's a process. There's a process in place. And in that budget, if you were to look at it, because again, we'll make that available to you in December, if you'll look at it, you'll see some of these very things that we're going to talk about broken down in that budget. So 5 ways that we use the financial resources you give us. Let's roll.
All right. First way we use donations is for missions.
Missions, that's right. So we want to reach people with the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so when you give to our church, there's a significant portion of that you're giving that's actually leaving our church, right? So we give around, maybe it's a little bit over now, 10% of what comes in goes right back out towards missions in some form, right? So there are several different ways that we give missionally. One is to our Southern Baptist Convention,
of course,
and our state convention, and our local association. So you think about, we've talked about this in the past. We talked through all this, that we have a Charleston Baptist Association that we as local churches within our city collaborate together and cooperate for different things. So we give a small percentage to the Charleston Baptist Association. We give a little larger percentage of our income to the state convention, and so that helps support some of the things that are going on in our state, disaster relief, things of that nature. And then we give another portion. It's routed through the state convention, but then another portion goes to the national convention, the Southern Baptist Convention on the national level. And that national level, that's what goes to support the different entities of the Southern Baptist Convention. You think about the International Mission Board and our missions giving to international missions, or the North American Mission Board. You think about your son Ivy's received funds in the past because he's a church planter, and we've supported that through the Southern Baptist Convention. There's different things that we support on a national level that you fund every time you give, because a portion, and I think right now, if I'm not mistaken, it's either 5 or 6% of our entire budget goes toward Baptist works. That'd be local association, state convention, national convention. So that's a significant. You think about a $1.7 million budget. That's a significant amount of money that goes out of our church directly to work that's being done by Southern Baptists all over the world. And a large part of that work is a missional type work, right?
Including feeding the hungry.
Feeding the hungry, right? Disaster, all those things, right?
A lot of things that we don't think about. Yeah, seminary education,
So we have 6 Southern Baptist seminaries that are supported through the cooperative program. We've talked about that in the past, that through our collective giving as churches, students, like when I was a student at New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary, most of my education was paid for because of...
Mine was completely paid
because
for.
of the cooperative program. So you have that. Then there are some other things that we give towards as well. We give towards, church plants. We have been faithful to give to your son's church because they've been getting started. And in Boston, just that whole dynamic of, starting a young church and them learning how to give. And so helping that church out as they get started. We've given financially over the years. Systematically, we've given to Arbor Way Community Church. We started doing that with another church in Utah, Redemption Church. That's similar to Ivy Rose Church, where we've sent teams there, and we're going to continue to send teams, and we're helping that church to reach their community. So we are giving resources away to other churches that we believe in, that are just getting started, and trying to help them to sustain their mission. We are financially supporting church replants. So you think about our family of churches. You think about Northwood Wando and Northwood Berkeley. We've been able through your giving to be a blessing to those congregations as we've restarted those churches and as they've come into the family and taken on our name. And so that's been part of it. There's benevolence that takes place in our community. We set aside an amount of money each year that we just use to bless people in our community. Right. So that when someone comes to our church and they have some kind of physical need, there's money set aside that we can that potentially we can meet that physical need. We share the gospel with them and help them to think about what their next steps might be in their faith. But also, hey, you need a a meal or whatever it is. Sometimes it's, a hotel room or whatever the case may be. Sometimes it's families within our church that go through difficult times. That happens from time to time, that we'll have a family where, dad lost his job and maybe mom works outside the home but isn't making enough to support the family, or maybe mom's working inside the home. She's a stay-at-home mom, and so dad loses his job, and what do? We're kind of in a bind, and so when we are aware of those kinds of needs, we can come alongside and financially bless. Sometimes it's been where you'll have someone in our church that's going through cancer and having those expensive treatments, and insurance isn't covering it all, and we're able to come alongside them and bless them financially. We've done that quite a few times. But all that
comes out of the missions.
Is missional giving, right?
Missional giving, yes.
That's money that comes into our church that we send out in some way that we don't use for the ministries of our church. We use to bless, whether it's across the world or across the country, or to bless people in our community. That's money that leaves this place with a missional purpose.
Amen. All right. Second way we do that is through ministries in the church.
Yeah. So you think about missional stuff, missional outside of our context. Then you think about our local church, what takes place here.
Right.
Like it's just a matter of life, right? Like this because in your house, hopefully, if you're wise, you have a budget. Mm-hmm. All right, you know what the car payment's going to be every month. You know what the house note's going to be. You know what the grocery bill's going to be typically. You know all those things with inflation. You have no idea now. It used to be this. Now it's $5,000 to go, get hot dogs, but whatever. So you have a budget, and the reality is you can't do life without money.
That's true.
You can, but you're going to be on the side of the street begging, and it's just not the best way to live. And so. Same in the local church, right? Like, it just costs money to do ministry.
It costs money. Yeah, it does.
So you think about.
I wish it was free. I wish we could just, it'd
but
be
you
great.
Think about, think about all the different ministries that we offer in our church, whether it is our Life Connection groups, whether it is a discipleship group, whether it is, you name it.
Guest
services.
Yeah.
You think about coffee, There's all of these different ministries that take place in the life of our church.
Children's ministry,
youth student ministry.
Yeah, we just keep on rolling.
The list goes on and on and on. You think about everything that your family participates in. In some way, there's some money behind it. The curriculum we have to buy for a children's ministry, or the items they need as far as whatever it is.
Paper, pencils,
crayons,
markers,
whatever. Yeah. Same with student ministry, whether it's Bibles or software for the databases or whatever the case may be. The list goes on and on and on of different resources that we need as a church to be able to do these ministries well, right? So you think about a large portion of our budget goes directly, and that's what happens every year. Our staff comes together, and other ministry leaders that lead various ministries, they present to our finance team every year an itemized budget.
Exactly.
Itemized, right? It's
not
like
what we're going to spend.
It's not like Anna comes and says, we need $10,000 for children's ministry. Will you give us $10,000? No, she itemizes. I need this much for curriculum, this much for supplies, this much for safety training, this much, and she just goes down the list, itemized, of here's all the things that we need in our children's ministry for the next year. And then we come to the table as a finance team and look over that and look at the entire budget and determine if we're able to fulfill that need. Right. Sometimes it's just the way it is. Right now, it hasn't been this way here so much because we've been really blessed and our church financially has been growing. But sometimes, you have to go back and say, hey, I know you want that, but you're going to have to look at some places to cut because we're not projecting that much income for the next year. But all that to say, like a big portion of our budget goes to fund the ministries of our local church.
And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. You say, well, I just think all money should go to missions. Well, it just doesn't work that way.
But then we would not have curriculum and supplies.
And then money wouldn't go to missions because we wouldn't be here.
That's right. So it's just the way it is, right? So and all that happens, all the ministry happens because you give. Because you give of your resources, we're able to buy the supplies, we're able to have technological resources, we're able to have whatever it is. It comes from your faithful giving. That's where that comes from. Again, we're not getting other outside sources other than your giving to help us to fund these various ministries that you think about, and I know like for some ministries like Awana, we we ask our parents to pay for some of the material. We ask our parents because in Awana, the children wear vests and they have all these books, and it's very.
It's
so
great.
We had 160 here Wednesday night.
Unbelievable.
If we financially did all of that as a church, that'd be a huge amount of money. So we ask parents to, hey, can you please help with this part? Can you please pay whatever that fee is? Now, there's some who obviously can't, and so we try to offset those costs whenever we can.
I was going to say we do that.
We would try to scholarship kids and all that kind of stuff, or help.
And I'm a standing scholarship person.
And
I will always help.
To help pay for that. But yeah, they like that. Anyway, point being, there's a lot of ministry that takes place, and it all. It's in some way costs some cash. And so when you give to your church, you're giving towards missional efforts that are taking place outside of Northwood, but you're also taking other things, right? And I'm just going to go down the list. I keep thinking things as we're talking. Fireworks show.
Yeah, that's a big one.
That's a big one.
And
right?
there's a huge outreach. Yeah.
But we got to pay for that thing. And so that comes out of our giving, right?
That's right.
You think about Celebrate the Light, Trunk or Treat, all these different events that we have that are great evangelistic events that get a lot of people on our campus. Like, yeah, that's because of your giving, we're able to do that. I mean, I wish all those fireworks were just given to us for free, but they cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
Like it just doesn't work that way. And so we have to now, the team that does that, they don't charge us for their time.
Right.
But we do have to pay for the
Thank
materials.
the Lord for that.
Yeah, we do have to pay for the materials. And so like that doesn't come out of nowhere. I mean, your giving helps to fund those big evangelistic events that we do that are such a blessing to our community. So your money, we use it for missions and the ministries of the church.
Third way, and this is a big thank you, you pay the staff.
Yeah, you pay the staff, right? And that's a biblical thing.
It is.
Think about, when the Apostle Paul writes, he talks about, how the laborer is worthy of his pay. And just this idea that a church should take care financially of those who are laboring for them and ministering to them. And this church does that very well. We're very thankful that people pay us. I'm very thankful that my family gets to eat tonight because of this church. I mean, I have a couple part-time gigs, right? I teach adjunct at Charleston Southern, and I teach a little piano on the side here and there, and so I have a couple. But those part-time gigs would not put food on the table for my family. That is a fact.
Yes,
those things are more for the love of it than they are for the money. But at any rate, so we eat, right, because you give.
That's right.
We
eat,
my boys,
live in our house.
Right,
and
my
other
boys
things.
have clothes on their backs because I have clothes on my back because you give. So my family is sustained because of the giving of this local church, and I don't take that lightly. That's a big deal.
Amen.
I mean, I'm very thankful
Amen.
for that. That we get to live a good life where. Because of the way that you bless us, and I'm very thankful for that.
Amen.
And but so
and it's not just you.
No, it's our entire team.
I was going to say
now we have full-time and part-time staff members, but we have full-time staff members that are they're dependent upon this church for their livelihood, and that's not a bad thing. Like I think that's a scriptural thing that we take care of our leaders, and this church does that, and I'm very thankful for that. And we do have a larger staff because our church is growing larger. I don't know. I always lose count. I know as far as pastors, we have 7 or 8 now, and we have children's ministry directors and this and that. So our staff continues to grow. I don't know how many people get a paycheck from this church, but that number continues to grow because our church continues to grow.
And as we grow, it will continue to grow. It's just not going to go backwards. Yeah.
We want to be able to have the staff to care for the needs of the people and to implement the ministries of the church. So in a church our size, typically about 50% of the budget does go to staff.
That's right.
That seems like a large number, but you think about, you're paying people to do a work full time, and their livelihood is depending on that work. Like that's about average. So you think about churches like ours. Most churches like ours are our size, or even a little smaller than our church, and even larger, are dedicating about 50% of their income to pay the staff. And that's so when we do the budget every year, I work with the personnel team on staff and what staff should be paid and all that kind of stuff. And that's the number I'm always keeping in mind. Of total budget, 50%.
Right.
So, yeah.
All right. Next thing, and this is huge in many ways.
Yes.
Facility.
Yes. So we have a fairly large facility that's only going to get larger over the next couple of years. Well, your generous giving sustains this facility.
Mm-hmm.
That's just bottom line. I mean, everything from the electricity bill to maintenance, and you think about air conditioning units. When one of those bad boys goes out, I mean, we've got some large units. One of those units goes out, it's $30,000.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not chump change.
Or gets stolen.
And we've had that happen before,
Yeah,
which thankfully insurance covered that one.
Yeah, thank the Lord for that, yes.
But every aspect of this facility is paid for through your financial giving. And again, that's one of those budget items. Is a pretty big deal. I think we every year, I think the number is somewhere around $200,000 that we project to spend just on the maintenance and upkeep of this facility. It's a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
But you think about, running the electricity in a facility this size is thousands of dollars a month.
Yeah.
It just is, right? You think about an air conditioning unit going out, or you think about things that just have to be replaced, whether it's
just had the
lights or
carpets cleaned
carpet or whatever. I mean, if we don't upkeep the facility, then it's like you not upkeeping your home. It just gets in disrepair. And the more that your house stays in disrepair, the more expensive it becomes to eventually bring it up to date.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we have to make that investment into the facility. And you think about our facility. I know, that doesn't sound very exciting to give, and knowing that $200,000 of our annual income as a church goes to facility stuff, but still, man, I mean,
it has to happen.
It has
folks.
to happen.
I mean, there's no way out.
You think about how much this facility is used by this church and this community. Like this facility,
in and of itself becomes an outreach, because we do open it up
this
to our
facility has
community.
become a place of outreach, which we're very thankful for. But on top of that, the church is the people, not the building. But the building is important because the building is a gathering place for people to be trained and equipped to go back out into their world. A facility is important, right? Like, I know in other parts of the world, China, wherever, house church, what have you, I get that. I know that you don't have to have a facility like this to be a church. I get that. But it's a very helpful tool for ministry. And you come to our church, you would agree with that, because you're here enjoying every week an air conditioning building. You're enjoying the resources that are provided by this campus. And so, listen, I know you ain't got to have a building to be a church. I get that. I understand. But it is a very helpful tool to be able to do ministry well.
Amen. And then the fifth way is this future planning.
Yeah, and so we do that. We set aside. Now, we honestly have just started doing this in the past couple of years, because every extra penny we were receiving for a few years, we were using to pay off debt on facility. And so when we were able to retire our debt a couple years ago, we shifted and started to take extra income. I should say extra. It wasn't extra income. We started budgeting income towards future planning. So a couple $100,000 a year we set aside for the future, right? And so you think about the buildings we're going to build over the next year. We've started to put some cash away for that.
Right.
We've already used some of that cash to pay for just pre-building stuff, architect, getting the plans drawn up, permits, all that kind of stuff. But we did that. We set aside money for future planning. If you think about it, those are the different ways that when you give, your money is used. So we're not just putting it in a pot, right, and say, okay, whoever wants to come use this for whatever. There's a budgeting process for it. There are very specific ways that it's used. And honestly, the reason why we're doing this is because I'm aware that probably there are quite a few people listening that have just never thought about.
Yeah,
hey,
probably.
How is that money used when it's given to the local church? So as your pastor, if you're part of our church family, like I am, I'm very thankful for the financial gifts that you give, because we are only able to do what we do because of your generosity. Your generosity with your time, your talents, and also your treasures, the financial gifts that God has given you to give to this local church. And so I hope that as you think about these things, it encourages you to continue to be faithful to give to your local church. And if you're not faithful to give to your local church, I hope it encourages you to start being faithful in your giving as obedience to the Lord, but also just because you believe in what God is doing in this local church.
So if our facility and in our church buildings and other things, our ministries, our staff, everything is the tools that we use to reach a lost and dying world for the sake of the gospel, then we also, I believe, need to be praying as well. So how would you, is there a way we could maybe just start the process of some that really haven't thought this way, but to pray about how God can use the resources that they've given.
Yeah, I think one is praying for yourself that you would have, that God would cultivate in you the kind of heart that He wants you to have for generosity. But two, I mean, we really need your prayers that we will be wise in the way that we steward the resources that you give. And there's so many terrible stories of, sinful ways that, people within churches have embezzled or used money or all that kind of stuff. And, and that's not happening here. And Lord willing, it's never going to happen here. However, we won't be wise.
That's right.
We won't be wise to use every penny that's given to this church in a way that glorifies and honors the Lord. And so praying for your staff, your pastors, your finance team, your leaders to have wisdom to use the money well. We don't want to waste it.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's right. So pray for us.
Yeah.
Pray for us.
Yeah.
All right, Pastor, this has been great. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. And as we think about these things and begin to pray, why don't you get us ready for next week?
Yeah, I hope today's episode has been helpful for you. I hope it's encouraged you to think a little bit more about how you give and why it's so significant. And if this episode has been helpful for you, I hope you will hit that subscribe button so you can have new content delivered to your device every single week. Leave us a 5-star review because that really does help us to get word out about the podcast. And as always, we hope today's episode has helped you connect faith to life.